So today I'm going to be working through one of my own personal resumes that I made back when I was doing my initial job searching. And this was for a company that was a contractor through Jacobs. The job specifically is on the title. It is a level 1 scientist for chemical or biological engineering. That's what the Chem Bio E is for. And this is just going to be an example of like really how you modify your resume and what you're kind of looking for to really change up as compared to what you might see from what a template would give you, which is how I built my original one. So we're going to look through the job requirements first, and this is kind of important so we can like figure out where the job is, like what we might have to do and what kind of things we might be expected to do. So we have it's located in Kennedy Space Center, which is strange because both Jacobs and this contracting company are sourced out of Huntsville, Alabama. So we know that we're going to be moving for our job, and it's going to be actually requiring a change of location, and you might not be interacting with the same person who's hiring you. So there's a little bit of balancing a new work environment plus moving, and this will be expected. Now, basic responsibilities, we're expecting somebody to have a bachelor's degree, biology, chemistry, chemical engineering, things like that, a major science field, because we're going to be working as a scientist in the basic stuff. We're going to be expected to be able to operate, set up, and troubleshoot any of our lab equipment that's really going to be expected to be there. That seems to be kind of the job we're doing. We're going in, we're learning the equipment, and we're helping set things up and run experiments based on what we're being told. Now, we're also going to have to interface with the payload developer and the principal investigator to be able to really set up this experiment to their guidelines based off of what they're looking for. So these two people seem to be the expected boss of us, and that these are people we're going to have to directly interact with as our higher ups. So some physical requirements that were of note. We're going to be working in a hazardous testing facility. So it's Kennedy Space Center. They're going to be launching rockets. They're going to have rocket fuel. They're going to have missiles. They're going to have tons of different like engine fuel and other very explosive or caustic chemicals that are going to be there. And because of this, we're going to be required to wear hearing and ear protection because rockets going off, you're going to have major problems, and you don't want to have any kind of debris randomly fly in your eye, and you have a lot of trouble with that. It also stated you will need specific thick layers of clothing for work, and you might be required to wear specific kinds of boots, specifically for whatever work environment you might be going into. Now, ERC Incorporated, which is the Jacobs contractor, is located in Huntsville, and we're going to be down in Florida. This is going to be super important because it means we're a contractor to the government. And we'll be working specifically with NASA because it is Kennedy Space Center, and it's not like Marshall Space Flight Center, which will be a combination of the Army, MDA, and NASA. So we're going to be really working for one government contract, and that means like when that setup goes away, we're going to be losing an entire government job, but we possibly have other avenues back in. But we're going to be on a government contract which has a like set deadline. So the work needs to be done by the set deadline, and it's going to be hard to like match up sometimes. Now, we're going to get into the one of two sections in this actual covering. We're going to cover the cover letter section and my resume section. The resume section will be pictures and really working through different coloring and like phrasing and stuff. The cover letter is much more language and intent and formality and like your reasoning behind stuff. So the real format we're going to be working with is we have on the left, we have my initial form of the resume, which is what I wrote 3 years ago. And then I have this cover letter resume is what I wrote for the modification for this example. Now, the opening section, I state, like, I'm applying for this job that was listed in a place, and I found it through a generic site. This is not super great. I'm supposed to you should use more formal language. So it's like I'm applying, it's like I encountered a position, list the position, while browsing through a more specific careers page, so Jacob's careers page, and I was made aware when searching for this kind of job. Instead of just looking like I'm just browsing for jobs on Google, it's much more targeted. They'll feel like you're seeking them out more specifically. And we come in here to the personal section of the cover letter. It's really degrees I've got, coursework that emphasizes my work with the lab, or coursework that emphasizes my skill set for where we're going to be, and why you might want to look into me because I have the skills you're looking for. Again, formal language. On the left side, I'm writing much more stream of consciousness. I'm writing much more how I speak as compared to what is formally written. Um, don't do this, like get your thoughts down, and then really work on formalizing what you're saying. And it's easier if you do it in multiple steps. Um, Clearing up the descriptions and skills is much better. And because what we looked at is we saw that we're going to be working for a contractor through Jacobs to NASA. Jacobs and NASA utilize mostly engineers, and they're going to be basically looking for somebody to cover an engineering position. So we're going to be looking for something more safety oriented and more job site oriented for what skills we're looking at, instead of somebody like sitting back in a lab 100 miles away giving test results. And we really need to show that in this actual setup that we have the technical know-how and the language of how an engineer speaks instead of how an English major speaks or how I'm speaking right now. So in the final section of the cover letter, I actually had 2 more paragraphs to go through. One was like how I'm a good fit of the company because of what I'm working with, and then talking about how my resume is enclosed and I want to get back to you in like 2 weeks so I can really get set on what's going. That's way too early in this process for the resume and getting back to you in 2 weeks setup. We really should be waiting for the hiring manager to get back to us on this kind of case. And if they don't get back to us in 2 weeks to 3 weeks, consider the job dead. Consider you're not going to get it. So if that's how that happens, you just get that. So what we did is we modified it in that first section. Instead of being I'm a good fit for the company and I'm a good fit because A, B, C, D, and E, we went I believe this will be useful for me and my experience because the company, Jacobs or ERC, has this really big influence inside this kind of work field with a broad range of experience, and it's something I'd really like to learn from. This is much more enticing for hiring managers and other people who want to work with, because that way you don't sound snotty like I know everything already, and you're just more interested in learning what you got. And then you talk about how the job is particularly interesting, and like, here's where you can reach me to reach out to me. Thank you for your time. And it's much more simple and doesn't put the burden of speed and time onto the hiring manager. So in the resume section, this one's going to be a little bit shorter because the resume actually got cleaned up only in a few sections because it was just mostly grammatical and formatting errors. So on the left side, we have the unmodified document, and then on the right side, we have the modified document with the red lines, so you can really see what was changed. And we see that we have more of a formatting change in the left-hand column to bring it, use up a little bit more of the space on the top side, and make it actually seem a bit more spread out. We still have all of our graphics with the email and phone number to meet us that we had in the previous section. We have our date of graduation and experiences for like our education, and then it really comes down to skills, relevant coursework, and a job experience. And I actually have job experience as a lab technician, so I put that, and that's really where the majority of my errors are. The major changes that we have are going to consist of one of 2 things. We have the skills sections over here, and then we have the major job sections. I'm going to go ahead and touch on the skills section first because it's much smaller and it's a lot easier to talk about. So when we look at the left side skills section and the right side skills section, the only major 2 differences in the left side is the formatting was a little bit more left facing, and we wanted to bring it more center of the column and spread it out a little bit more. So that's going to add a little bit more spatial recognition to the actual piece, so we have a little bit more space through here instead of it all being clumped up. You can actually see it's a lot easier to read. Then we go through, and I stated Windows programs, and it's a lot better as an engineer, because engineers love Windows programs, but it's better to talk about which ones you're actually going to be using. Excel, Word, PowerPoint, and OneNote. So engineers love spreadsheets. It's a lot easier to use spreadsheets and talk about things, and you can program them and do them a lot of stuff, and you can just, if everybody knows how to use Excel spreadsheets, everybody can kind of look at the same data and figure out how the hell you got there. Word, it's one of the most accessible writing programs out there, and most companies pay for Windows programs like Word, so everybody can use something they're comfortable with and everybody uses the same thing. PowerPoint is on a similar point, where you actually use the same presentation guide and it's all the same formatting and you can all work with the same setup. And then OneNote. OneNote's it's basically an email service that Windows puts out that also allows for memo transfers and modification of boxes and better like CCing of people into the actual conversation, and it makes it a little bit more compact and it's really like engineers love it. So we're going to actually change the skills up a little bit to make it look more like an engineer stuff and have us be more favorable with the engineering crowd specifically. Now, the other part of the resume is really we worked on font, bringing everything to type point, and bring everything into active voice and what the actual responsibility for the previous bot and like respectability of what our work was. So we're going to be working on like these are our responsibilities and that these are the respectable responsibilities. So like instead of like self-sufficient on a given task, that's not respectable. That's something that you bring and that you can learn how to do, and that's like not expected of the job itself. So working with a team environment, performing biochemical lab procedures, installation, use, and maintenance of an HPLC equipment, and then recording documentation and presenting future findings. These are the things that the job actually requires, and these are the things that you're expected for the current job to be brought over from the previous job. So, like, these are the skills I already have shown that I can do in work, and these are what I can bring forward to the job that we're going on. And this is really what the job is supposed to build, and this is what they can actually expect out of you, and it makes you more respectable as a hiring person. So, like, because I have this kind of experience, it's a little bit more that they can expect out of you. And so, with just this increase and just being able to bring everything back up, that really brings us to the end of what I'm going to be showing you about the resume and stuff like that. And I hope this kind of thought process and comparison is a little bit more useful for you, especially with the coding of what I was doing. So, thank you.